In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Today, dear brothers and sisters, in today's epistle reading, we heard a section from the Apostle Paul's epistle to the Galatians. His epistle to the church in Galatia is a fascinating book, and one which our lectionary gives only 3 Sundays. Paul's primary task when he's writing this work is writing against a group called the Judaizers. People who held that a person had to be under the Mosaic covenant, that is, they had to be Jewish, before they could be baptized, before they could then be Christian. And in today's reading, we find that St. Paul, after a very brief opening, immediately set about establishing the authority that he had to be giving directions about this matter. As part of this, we learn a little about the man behind the words. We hear Paul talk about his former conduct in Judaism, a Jew born of Jews, zealous for the traditions of his fathers. He advanced in Judaism beyond all of his peers, so much so that he saw it part of his duty to stamp out the so-called Nazarene heresy, what we today would call the earliest church, the start of Christianity. We hear him talk about how he was converted, not forcibly converted, but it must have felt very similar at the time. Not everyone gets a vision from God saying, you're hurting the God that you think that you serve. And that he received this on the way to Damascus. In Acts, we would hear how he didn't take in food and he didn't take in drink from the time that he received this vision, all the way until the time that he was baptized by the apostle Ananias, who we also celebrate today. And in today's epistle reading, we hear that he immediately acted, not in the sense that we may think of, where we think of action as going out and doing. His immediate action was to learn, was to sit down at the feet of those who knew better and to follow in their footsteps. And he did this for 3 years. This is how he was prepared to act on his call. What we see in St. Paul, and what is common to any facet of the apostle's life, was his dedication, his single-mindedness, and his devotion. Whether it was his zeal for the traditions of his fathers causing his advance beyond his peers, whether it was his attempt to destroy Christianity, or his massive turnaround, complete turnaround, newly zealous for the spread of Christianity even to the foreigners. Whatever it was, what is revealed was his single-minded dedication to following God as well as he could, with everything that he had. It's something for which we must be grateful. Indeed, there's a small number of us here who are Christian today and who can trace back to those who would have heard Paul preaching that very first time that he came to their city. When we look to ourselves, we may ask, to what are we called? And the answer is both simple and incredibly difficult. We're called to be saints. We're called to follow Christ, much like these holy people that we depict on our walls. We were thus called in baptism, when it was prayed that we would remain invincible warriors in the faith. And we're called to this great task in a variety of ways. And it'll be different for each person. Maybe it's as a teacher, a gardener, an engineer, someone in business or IT or medicine. Perhaps it's as a parent with many children, perhaps none of the above. Perhaps it's living in the midst of a great metropolis, and perhaps it's living at a great distance from the nearest house. There's a variety of ways in which we can work out our salvation in fear and trembling, as the apostle would say to the church in Philippi. But it does not change to what we are called. To what we are called is holiness. Dear brothers and sisters, it's my greatest wish for you, each and every one, to follow this calling in your life. And we're not left defenseless. We're not left uncertain of how we might put this into practice. We have a way in which we can do this. The faith in what Christ has done for us, hope in what Christ will do for us, and that self-sacrificial love which he showed for us, and that same self-sacrificial love that we return to him by being ever closer to him, praying, following his teachings, and keeping his commandments. And so let us then rededicate ourselves here and now to this glorious calling of sanctity and return to our God. Amen.